into this application. And that is not all. Usually museums only focus on the objects that they keep inside, even though there are plenty of objects in the city around the museum which closely relate to it and its collection. Your museum could create outdoor audio tours which naturally progress into your main exhibition space. And that is a very good way to attract more visitors. Well now, that is possible. Outdoor and indoor, online and offline, the software platform from izi.TRAVEL allows you to do all that and much more. Like all these popular online services, izi.TRAVEL is also absolutely free. It consists of a web-based content management system with an intuitive interface for mastering and publishing audio tours, and handy mobile applications capable of finding and delivering all existing content in your city and all your city museums. Take a look at our next video for more information on how it all works.
Actually, in our next video, to make it shorter, that's the idea. We did it in a way of open platform. So for museums or any cultural institutions, it just takes a couple days to upload that content to the system, press the save button, and see. Actually, you're going to experience it yourself today in 1 hour. You're going to create a fake museum literally in half an hour yourself. You will see how it works. And I remember I was conversation with Nancy several weeks ago. She asked me how much time it would take me to upload the whole content of Baltimore Museum of Art to the system. It took 1 hour, and we got it all to the system. Like that. Actually, I also experimented with that yesterday. It was having seen this exhibition in the hall, some paintings from, I think it was Central Digital Art of Los Angeles. I suggested yesterday to create audio Bradburne, and they actually made it in 3 hours. Most of the time was spent on audio recording, but right now this exhibition is a constant program. Point, it's very easy to do. Actually, you might ask, open platforms, is it something new for museums or not? Actually, no. This slide is I saw it first time in the presentation of the Chief Digital Officer of the MEC, Srinivasyan. And he had a great idea that museums and visitors, they use internet for a long time already. How they do it? At first it was just web technology. And later on, they started to use YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So museums use these platforms already for a long time. Why do they do it? Because with the web technology, they have only thousands of users, but through platforms, they get access to millions of users. So what we have done is, for the entire platform, we simply just another platform to be used. In this time, but this time, this platform is specialized and one to guide specifically for museums inside the center. And by the way, this slide explains why we are free. Because you would never ever know any of these things if they're not free. There is no choice for any platform, serious platform, who wants to be on the market to be not free. Because if you are not free, somebody else will do better. Okay, I think it's not about technology. We exist. We already have 800 museums. We have 2,000 guided tours. We have content in 40 languages already in the system. We have 7,000 people and organizations who registered, and every month we grow 10% more. It's really exploding. In Europe it's quite popular. In Netherlands, in Italy, in Russia, France, etc. Now we came to America. And actually our idea is that our message to museums is that we suggest you never ever invest any more money in technology. You get it for free. Our suggestion to museums to spend your efforts and resources only on the storytelling content. Because one of our messages to you is your content should outlive any technology, or probably including ours. You should make great content, probably to live for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. Definitely in 40 years, many technologies come and go, but you don't care. You have the content, you upload to any platform you can find, and you are fine. And from this point of view, I suggest that we forget about all these technologies. They simply exist. But web technology, you never think about websites, web servers, who cares? When you create a website, it will be published somewhere, and you don't think about technology. Okay, but know, sometimes museums approach us and still talk about technology. In many cases, they talk about technology which is called positioning systems. Well, could you make this Wi-Fi triangulation, like, for example, Cleveland Museum of Art, they invested $1 million in this creation of great technology where your telephone knows where you are. The museums keep on asking these kind of questions because they want to guide visitors through the exhibition and they want to know where the person is. But these technologies, first of all, they're expensive. It's really about $1 million just to install all these Wi-Fi routers. Secondly, companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Nokia, they're working on them. So once upon a time, you wake up and you see on your telephone that you can position yourself in any building, airport, museum, shopping mall. So why should we worry about that? They will do their job. Our job and your job just to create the content for that. But we wanted to address these concerns of museums about navigation inside the building, and we created something very simple, really simple. We call it photo navigation. That's how it works. Imagine you have your telephone and you simply swipe the pictures on it. It's Rijks Museum in Amsterdam. You definitely see that you are invited just to climb the staircase up there. You swipe it again. You have to go to the spot. And then you arrive to the painting. You press the play button, you hear the story. Good. Then you swipe it again, and you see that you have to go to another painting. It's absolutely simple to understand. And that's the point. Actually, it's a combination of navigation, photo-navigated stories, and the stories you can play. I made this guided tour in Rijks Museum personally in 1 hour. It took me another hour to do this red flight. That's it. Instead of spending millions on Wi-Fi triangulation, you can get it like that. Well, it was our answer to museums about this. And again, suggestion, forget about technology. But you know, when we realized that, we found that we got something more than just convenient to drive people through museums. I call it grassroots strategy. We discovered that this is a great tool to get your visitors again and again to your museum. How? Imagine you make several guided tours through museum, 5 of them, good quality. Probably about the same objects, but provide a different point of view on them, different style of explaining things. So the visitor comes to museum, follow one story, couple hours, he's tired, happy, comes back home. But he knows that still 4 guided tours to follow. There is a chance he comes again. What does it mean? That you can use your permanent collection to attract people again and again and again, providing more and more stories. Actually, it's a nice addition because before that, for museums, was the only way to get people again is to have temporary exhibitions, but it costs money. Okay, when we came to this idea, I immediately recalled James Bradburne, and he was talking to me for a while about a re-rating concept, a possibility to provide users with additional information from different angles about the same object. So I called him and said, well, James, let's do something in Pinacoteca Milan. And now the second presentation starts. It was about the past, now about the current. What's going on in Pinacoteca now? James, it's your...
I certainly won't talk about technology.
Yeah, about technology, we finish it forever. There will be no more technology in this field. Just storytelling.
Okay, now, when we were talking this morning about how we would do this tag team, because as Alex said, there is a symphony between a struggle I've been having with professionally for over 30 years about the nature of the museum visit, etc. Alex promised to quote Dale Carnegie for me, in which Dale Carnegie says, when life gives you lemons, you'll make limoncello or lemonade. Now, I'm actually known in my institution for saying something different, and it's already considered one of my, I hope, endearing eccentricities that I always say when you have lemons, you make limoncello. It is, after all, Italy. Just quickly, I mean, some of you, I was very touched this morning. Yes.
I'm sorry for that, but as a kind of, compensation, we'll bring some limoncello later.
Okay. I was very touched earlier of this chatting before. Somebody came up to me and said they actually read my papers, so I said, oh. So let me just quickly say, as I always do, that there is no theory, probably called that, it's not part of an autobiography. So generally, most of the things that I've been struggling with, and most of the analytical conclusions I've come up with have come from an experience, which I'll just briefly outline. As I started as a graphic designer and an exhibition maker, and also an architect in the 80s, and I went on to consult with UNICEF and UNESCO, specifically trying to find new ways of encouraging informal learning of science in countries and places where the existing school framework was very weak, so in Africa, in parts of Asia, in the Middle East. So there was a point where my real passion is to find out how to create environments where people learn for the pleasure of learning outside the structure and strictures of schools. In 1994, I was asked to head up the design team at what then was going to be Europe's newest science center, New Metropolis, now it's called NEMO, on which I based my PhD on the history of labeling in museums, and we proposed a way of addressing what the science center community traditionally called pinball effect. You know, the kids run around like a pinball in a science center, at least we're talking now 20, 25, 30 years ago. And I was convinced that this was not a nature of young people, it was actually a design flaw. We were not actually doing our job, and our exhibits were not living up to their billing, where we would say that this is the secret to unlocking young minds' curiosity. We had such great rhetoric, but when I did the timing, I found that kids generally spent less than 40 seconds with a hands-on exhibit. Over half of them broke the exhibit out of frustration for not getting it. The data was not supporting the rhetoric, so I set it as a personal challenge and a challenge for our design team to see whether we could create a set of experiences in which people stayed and engaged and completed and talked to each other, and all sorts of other desirable social phenomena. As I was saying to my colleague, that was considered very radical in 1994. People would walk out of a lecture that I was giving for having said such heretical things like science centers aren't actually living up to their billing. Now apparently people at least aren't walking out of the room when I say that. I then went on to, I was asked to go to Frankfurt because all my friends said, interactive science centers, you've got it easy. You can push buttons, you can do stuff. In art, in the museums, we can't do that. We've got cases and objects. And I said, well, yes and no. So I took the opportunity when asked to go run basically Richard Meyer's first museum of applied arts in Frankfurt, a museum of everything your grandmother had in your attic. Stuff. But the stuff was in vitrines, it was in showcases. And once again, I wanted to show that interactivity wasn't something you did with your hands, but with your mind. And we actually were Europe's first wireless museum. We had family and children's interactive experiences with the objects that were still in the vitrines. We were able to give an iPad. Remember the jelly-colored iBooks? We gave those to our visitors to explore the museum that way. And this is all in 1999. In 2001, we did the world's first exhibition on computer viruses as a form of concrete literature. And in 2002, we did the world's first exhibition on file sharing. Before the invention of Facebook, we were looking at Napster and how Napster had the potential to change the world. So from there, I was asked to direct the foundation by the CEO of Lego, the little bricks of which we all have 198% on the planet. And to support creativity learning in play. After that, in 2006, I was asked to apply for the job of Director General of Italy's new first public-private foundation for culture. And at the time, what the Florentines considered probably a disaster and certainly a miracle, I was given the job of running the Palazzo Strozzi. After which I did in 2015, and just this past summer, another miracle. I'm now running a small startup called the Pinacoteca de Brera. And I call it a small startup because it's indeed one of the country's most important art galleries, spoken of in the same breath as the Uffizi and the Accademia of Venice. But it's a startup because it is the first of 20 Italian state museums that has been given partial autonomy, and it's had our statutes, our budget, and our board were all approved only on the 21st of January this year. We had our bank account opened. The first bank account for our state museum in Italy was opened in November 2015. So it is a startup. I've been there 6 months. The autonomy is still being consolidated. We're doing stuff that no state museum in Italy has ever been able to do. Notwithstanding notwithstanding the quality of their directors. And we are 20 of us in the country, 7 sort of major league, and then 13 of a slightly lesser importance in Italian terms. And when we think of the quality of the objects in Italy, even the 13 lesser museums, like the Accademia in Florence, have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah.
Now, I want to make an argument today, and I don't want to talk too long. The basic argument is that we have created a monster. Since World War II, and even in the 50s and 60s, the museum was perceived as a dusty, uninteresting, irrelevant place. By the way, that rhetoric has not gone away. And in the mid-60s, 1966, Thomas Hoving had the brilliant idea of creating a temporary exhibition with the works that were in fact saved from the enormous floods in Florence in 1966. Phillips allowed him to bring some of those to America, and he did his first blockbuster. His blockbuster was done with a very specific reason. Tom Hoving wanted to bring people back to the museum. Remember, before Tom Hoving, there weren't even banners. That was another New Yorker cartoon. The banners, the first museum banners on the outside of a facade were in fact a New Yorker cartoon that said, "Welcome Mr. Hoving," who was the young dynamic director in the 60s. Unfortunately, I believe that we've created a monster because the temporary exhibition has become a destination in itself. It is very expensive to create. It involves risking a great deal of objects to bring them into one place. It brings in lots of visitors sometimes, by the way. Only 5% of the blockbusters actually begin to cover the majority of the cost. But they are seen as a way of masking the fact that statistics show that visitation to permanent collections is still slowly falling. And most recent statistics say that, in fact, attendance to museums is falling. If we strip out the statistical error of if you have somebody who goes to museums and you build 10 more museums and the same person goes to 10, it looks like you've got 10 times more visitors. But it's not true. You have the same visitor going to more places. And we have been building museums like crazy in the last 20 years, costing huge amounts of money, capital campaigns, and after 3 or 4 years, they all look really shabby. I invite you to go to Bilbao someday to see the Guggenheim in Bilbao now. It does not have the same kinds of levels of attention. The exhibitions are merely traveled around. It's not a happy story. It was a success story while it was a new building. So the argument is that we've got to figure this out. We have to bring people back to our museums because our museums, in the words of Elson Goodman, have to be an institution for the prevention of blindness. We have to remember that we are not part of the leisure industry. We are part of our identity as human beings, citizens in the world we live in. The museum has to, I think, be brave enough to return to its socially active mission of the 60s that was championed by Bill and Sandberg, by in fact Alfred Barr, by all the great museum directors of the 60s and 70s. We're convinced that the museum made us part of who we were. It wasn't just the leisure industry. It wasn't just something that was competing with going to the baseball game. It was really something qualitatively different. As Goodman says, works work when they participate in the making and remaking of our worlds. And I personally believe we have to claim the high ground again. Museums are far more important than just a stroll in the park on a Saturday afternoon. Now, as I said, the problem is we are seeing very significant falling attendance to permanent collections, and we are also seeing, for the first time, falling attendance to the temporary exhibition. The blockbuster has been used to justify all manner of sins, but in fact, if we look at them critically, they really haven't worked the way we like to believe. I did a benchmarking study in Palazzo Strozzi for 5 years in Italy of temporary exhibitions of blockbusters. Italy there are 1,000 temporary exhibitions a year, which has to be more than you need. And of them, only 5 in the past 5 years, so a very small number, even recovered 80% of their costs. So they're not the big panacea economically. 500,000 visitors to a temporary exhibition could cost you. In fact, one of the great Italian exhibition promoters, a guy named Goldini, bankrupted 3 cities by his strategy to situate the city on the cultural map by doing temporary exhibitions. He just used city money, led the city and ended up leaving town on a rail 3 times. We cannot count on the temporary exhibition to be the answer. So the picture in the middle is because, to someone's a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we keep inventing this damn exhibition, and I'm convinced that this is not the answer. In fact, I want to propose to you, almost in jest, that we have to stop making exhibitions. We have to start making inhibitions. By which I mean that we have to start re-inhabiting our permanent collections. We have to start trusting our objects. So we have to go from exhibition to inhibition. We have to believe that the works we have on the walls or the objects we have in the showcases actually are important, and so important that our job is to bring people to them with their minds and not just paper them over with temporary exhibitions, excuses. It's the way that we used to use hands-on in science centers. People thought science wasn't actually very interesting, so if you made it more exciting, it would somehow make it more exciting. And that showed a huge lack of belief in science. You think that a biologist spends 20 years studying and will work for almost no money, stay up all night. You say, hang on, it's not just because it's fun. It's not, so it's the same with museums. We have to trust our objects again. And inhibitions are a way of talking about the need to return to our collections and start to find ways in which people engage in a very deep way with the collections. Now, the Brera right now, as the collection source was before, I have two measures of what that means, and they're very banal and very basic, because again, the more you want to experiment, the more you have to challenge your own bullshit. Remember that Neil Postman, in his passing, that some of you will remember, teaching as a subversive activity, referred to the need for an automatic built-in crap detector. So as soon as we start saying grand things like I'm just saying, you'll say, hang on, what do you mean, Bradburne? I say, okay, what do I mean? I want to see people who are looking longer at the object. Not at the device, not reading the label, not possibly talking to people, because of course, what makes a museum different than most learning environments is what Maxwell calls the museum triangle. No one goes to a museum to look at the art. You go to a museum to talk about the art. You see, why do you think all that? Museums are about creating emotion around art. You do it by looking at the damn stuff. And of course, just looking at it a long time isn't enough. You want to see more in it. And our job is to create a context in which more is seen in the art. End of the proposal. Beginning of Brera, just so you know what I'm talking about, is my current startup playground torture center. State museums in Italy. I have no way of explaining to an American audience what that means. You really, I didn't get it, and I've worked in Italy 10 years. Imagine the U.S. Post Office of 1955 times 10, or it's just congested. Anyway, but it is a beautiful building. We have more masterpieces than you can shake a stick at. Starting Caravaggio, Raphael, Tiziano, Mantegna. We have every room is an American museum. It's full of blockbusters. It's full of masterpieces. Everywhere you look, it's full. We are also, the Palazzo de Brera is more than just the art gallery, which I run. It's also the city's most important library. It's also the country's largest art school, 4,000 students. It's also the city's oldest botanical garden. It's also the city's oldest observatory. So it's a fairly incredible place, and so incredible that when it was finally consolidated after being taken away from the Jesuits at the beginning of the 19th century, Napoleon baptized it the Royal Palace of the Sciences and the Arts. It was this idea that everything was happening at Brera, and that's the sense of Brera in which I'm working. So our mission is to put this place back in the heart of the city, because it's 5 minutes walk from La Scala. You can have a coffee at the Cafe Armani and be at the Monte Napoleone, and in 2 minutes you're at my door. You are 3 minutes from the city's most important theater. You are at the heart of the city physically. If you dropped a pin with your eyes closed into the middle of Milan, you would find Brera. But the most important thing is we have to put the visitor back in the heart of the experience. Because if there's anybody that gets forgotten in a state museum, it's the visitor. They don't really exist at all. Nobody counts. The visitor does not count, and that's a big change. So we want to put the visitor back in the heart of the experience, and not just to learn art history. if you remember that your first kiss was in front of one of our masterpieces, that memory will be with you for the rest of your life. So we're creating now, as I said, I started the 1st of October last year, so this is all startup territory. Our ambitions are certainly far greater than the actual work on the ground, although in terms of an Italian State Museum, we have already the first in nearly every respect to start to make change. So we're creating a family-friendly museum. And fundamental is we want to bring other voices into the museum. Nancy reminded me that at Palazzo Tourski, our contract said that curators were not allowed to write the labels. We wanted other voices in the museum, and that's in order to decenter, not to eliminate the curator. You can't get rid of the curator's voice. But as I often say, it's not just astronomers who have something to say about the stars. A poet can give us also very valid knowledge and experience of the stars. So what have we done? We've decided to create our inhibitions. So putting my money where my mouth is, as it were, we are going to create inhibitions and reinstall the 38 rooms of the Brera in the next 3 years, finishing with a reinstallation of the modern collection in a neighboring palazzo. The first inhibition is a dialogue. They're all going to be dialogues. One masterpiece from abroad comes in to talk to one of our masterpieces. In this case, this picture is in every single textbook on the history of art. It's the Marriage of the Virgin by Perugino and the Marriage of the Virgin by his very gifted student Raphael, both done within 8 months of each other, so they're clearly the same painting done 2 different ways. Never in the history of the planet have these paintings been seen in the same room, ever. Which is rather extraordinary. So this is our first inhibition, our first dialogue. As a reason to come back to the permanent collection, we said, okay, we're going to bring these 2 paintings. Added to the story, the Perugino was stolen by Napoleon in 1797, and it's never been back in Italy since. So that's pretty cool. And using that, this is in this room, as an excuse, we've reinstalled as a prototype, as a way of inviting criticism, as a way of getting people to jump up and down all over us. We've reinstalled the successive rooms. So there's the actual, that has never been seen in the history of the planet. We're also going to reinstall 3 major rooms plus our area of visible storage. Now let me give you a sense of what the place has looked like. That is the standard, that's from 1925. Yeah? In 1943, the Allies, for which one can feel rather badly, but they were the enemy at the time, 1943, the Brera was bombed extensively, as was all Milan, and only 2 rooms were left with the roof on. After the war, the big effort was to reinstall. Notice where the labels are. Correct. This is the what I inherited. This is the 1st of October. It's what I got. That color, that lighting, top lighting, very much owes a big debt to the old academic. The idea that this was the gallery for the students in the academia to study, so it had top lighting, very low, very few shadows, and labels. This big, in Italian, the name of the artist. Now, okay, in 7 weeks, so starting at the beginning in January, the team, because that's their whole story, which I'm not going to go into, is the real work here is not in changing labels. The real work is changing the structure inside the museum, which has 210 people. That's the new installation. Okay? So that's deeper color, more contrast, and notably large readable labels of 3 different kinds. Curatorial labels, albeit not written by the curators, checked by the curators. Family labels, designed to create dialogue with families in intergenerational groups. Remember, family is a code word for intergeneration. And the third is what Alex was talking about, which is rereadings. Because there's a great weakness in curatorial practice, which is to think that if you want to make a story, you have to put things together. The collection's like this, but you want to tell the story of the influence of Mantegna on Bellini, well, you've got to move all paintings around. That's the standard way a curator thinks about an exhibition. Of course, it costs a huge amount of time and effort to move paintings around. And it's just not worth it. But the idea of rereading is to see the collection differently through different eyes. So we did a first test of inviting and this is an ongoing program for the next 3 years of inviting famous authors to reread or to create new readings of the artworks through different eyes. The first authors we asked were Ingrid Rowland and Ali Smith, most of whom you probably know. In fact, the very first author we asked was Umberto Eco. And he said yes. He was my first author that said, I will write labels for the Brera. But when I called him, now about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, he answered the phone, and I went over to his place, we had whiskey, and he said, James, I'm feeling a little tired right now. As soon as I feel up to it, I'll write your labels. As we know, Umberto is no longer able to write our labels, which is a great tragedy, because I, in a short time, began to know him as a friend. And I don't have his labels. But we do have labels by Ingrid Rowland and by Ali Smith. And just to give you an example of what that means, a label that generally a curator would not write, the laws of physics do not apply in heaven. This is the first slide. So this is, someone will say something the curators would not sign. This new vision of writers is going on now in every single new installation. So Ali Smith also wrote for us. And there are about 5–10% of all the labels will be of those other typologies. Rereading can also be done in audio. The idea of rereading a collection doesn't have to be necessarily reading labels, but it can, because not everybody likes to read. We like to listen. We like to be told stories. So we, of course, have audio guides. We've had audio guides, our people doing audio guides, which are excellent. The usual kinds, you buy them with your ticket, are done by Antenna Audio since 2009. And currently, we're working on a project with Alex and our educational team. And Deborah Bloch, who's standing there trying to look modest, and she doesn't want me to say that she's here, is working with the team, with the educational team, using the platform to start to develop new kinds of rereadings in the exhibition. So for the first thing, the first obvious thing is all the labels we're doing. Every single label for the next 3 years. 650 labels plus 10% family labels plus another 10% author labels will be on audio. So you'll be able to go through in different ways with photo navigation to find different things in the exhibition. The family labels we're writing will all be on audio. On the Easy platform. How easy can it get? It actually is everything Alex was saying, and this is not an advertorial. It's just cool because it's easy, it's fast, it's cost-free. I have a lot of problems with money in the State Museum. Not having it, and when I have it, I'm not allowed to use it. There's the rules. So the paradox of state funding is you can get $1 million tomorrow. That's great. You just can't spend it. Anything over sort of $40,000, I mean, you have no idea. So even the money's not the problem. So easy, in both senses of the word, is really a good thing. It's also cheap and easy. It's wonderful. And we're also doing a kind of an invitation to look at individual objects for a long time. Back to my goal, look longer, see more. We're using that technique of audio that is downloadable onto your device as a way of getting people to look longer and see more. We have a blog, which you can, I guess, we'll give instructions as somehow to go to the blog. I don't know if this is true. We have a fantastic blog that talks about the way we're developing these things, because the point is, it's not perfect. As Alberti was famous in saying, he said, nothing is both newborn and perfect. All of this is meant to be changed. Those labels, there's problems with them. We found that they're not readable in certain situations, that the contrast is too low, that the wording is too... They're being changed. This is an experiment, and a live experiment. The last, I want to finish with a comment Alex made also, is that Milan, remember, Brera is not by itself. Brera is the center point of a city, in which it's a very good city. It's part of a complex ecosystem of other institutions, of commercial operations, of hotels, of taxi drivers. There's a whole... Brera is in fact, if you Google Brera, you'll get Brera the neighborhood. It is the hippest place in the city, but it's very dense. And the possibility of developing instruments to explore, not just guides, and as we did in Florence, we did passports for different themes that people could use. They're sort of like a mini guide, but also actual narrative trails through the neighborhood using photo navigation starts to open up enormous possibility to to involve not only other institutions like the Colton Soli, Natural History Museum, the Fortezza, but also to include our neighbors, Bulgaria Hotel, Mandarin Hotel. We've got all these extra players in the zone. So this ability to experimentally light on your feet, easy to use, suddenly means that we can, instead of investing heavily and getting all constipated about the product, because we just invested 100 grand in this, we can't possibly call it into question. Hey, you can start to develop an internal culture of experimentation. And if there's any secret to what's going on now in the state museums, and my challenge is all about that, it's not about the labels. It's not about really the art. It's about creating an internal culture of creativity, experimentation, willingness to take risk, because we don't know what comes up next. And this is one of the tools that one can open that up with. Now, I do want to finish with one slide, which is a nod to our sponsors, because quite exceptionally, this work is also being done not just by the Brera, but also by a very small foundation that, among others, Deborah and I created to support educational innovation in institutions around the world, called Circle Square. And its biggest sponsor is here in LA, so I feel she's not here, our sponsor isn't here, but I'm just going to say that we are very much indebted to Vera Campbell, who was a tremendous Los Angeles and has supported educational innovation at the Getty when our Power and Pathos show came, and is supporting this adventure as well. So if you come to Milan, that's the new image. Come to Milan, see if we're living up to the billing. If we're not, tell us. We'll have a blog. You can put in comments. There's lots of ways to tell us that we've got to get better, and that's what the whole point of the exercise is. Thank you. So, cheers, experimentation. That's what happens when you work. And this is the limoncello. Okay, Alex, it's all yours.
Well, Jen, thank you very much. And that was the idea of the whole presentation, to demonstrate how technology companies and museum startups work together. And we see how it works. And I'm very grateful to Pinacoteca and especially to Brera, who really made a tremendous job, because actually the whole project started 2-3 months ago, and they've done 3 photo-navigated tours this time. And they were very nervous, well, we couldn't make it in time for Museums as a Web conference. And then Alex Palin is another guy standing there. He said, okay, let's turn this lemon into lemonade. That's how we can do the limoncello. That inability to make the guide work perfectly by this time, let's explain in the blog. So that's how blog started. And that, because it was the idea of opening the whole project, and you can follow it later on because the project is not finished yet, and you'll see how things are developing. And it's very important to demonstrate to colleagues, museums, well, what are the issues, what are the problems, and Deborah does very good. And I personally was surprised that educational department picked it up so easily. Now they're all so excited doing this project as technology companies as well, right? And actually, but at this moment, I'm not a technology company, I'm just a visitor of the museum. So I learned that as a visitor, I finally get this photo navigated books. I know where to go, what to listen, again, where to go. So that was the idea of photo navigation to implement it in the Pinacoteca, while Google and them were working on this technology things. Okay, so just to repeat what James already said to some extent, that in the city level, we have the content level when museums unite together, work together with botanic gardens, etc. And at the high level, there is a city tourist authorities, hotels, restaurants. All of them could publish a nice poster. Well, I have in my hotel great free guided tours for you, created by the museum. So in this way, hotels and restaurants will help museums to promote this guided tours. So museums get to the tourism market, which was hardly achievable for them before, and they go to the tourism market with the same mission, education, which is really great. Okay, good. Done with this content, and now you're relaxed, you're happy, let's talk about money. This guy promised that it's free, but yeah. Let's talk about money which we can bring people. And that's the idea. If you have the whole city with a lot of participants and a lot of businesses promoting these guided tours, it becomes quite easy to get sponsors. We already spoke with some banks in Amsterdam, with ING Bank. They visited me in my office. And when they learned what we are doing, they said, wow, we would like to be part of it. This guided tour is presented to you by ING Bank. That's what they want. Because these guided tours, remember, they will last for 30, 40, 50 years. They will outlive in technology, and they will carry the name of ING Bank. Bank is about sustainability, long-term relations, so they may get exposed for a long term. And if banks or other sponsors get involved, it means money, not for us, we are fine, for you, for content developers, for the museums. It's quite easy to get. And not only commercial sponsors could play this game, but also not commercial sponsors like big foundations like Bloomberg in America, European Union in Europe. We proved this point, and last year we applied for several Euro grants, and in December we got €1 million for the consortium, museums, universities, private companies. Ilaria Duva sitting here, she's part of this consortium, which got this money. She's going to make guided tours for train routes and for the train stations in Italy. It's also interesting. And actually we believe that this money you brought to this project will explode because it's possibility to make high quality content. The more high quality content we create for all kinds of platforms, not only for us, but for other platforms, the more happy our visitors to the city, etc., etc., etc. And by the way, probably some of you remember that on Thursday night, Nancy probably knows this MuseWeb, this initiative, non-for-profit organization, and the same idea. She's developing a similar project in Baltimore and Washington, and we are happy to watch this process going on, and it will be the same process of getting money from sponsors and bringing it to the city, develop the content for all open platforms, including ours. And we saw a couple of weeks ago, for example, that Onassis Foundation, they already published their first museum in our system. Well, they are ready to sponsor it further. Okay, so cities and money, what else? We are doing our homework further. And just to give an example, we are sitting in Amsterdam, and there is one Dutch company you probably heard about, it's called TomTom. It's GPS navigation. And I visited their office last year, and we discussed that it would be nice if TomTom car navigation system on the highways in Europe start to tell stories about castles, villages, battlefields. It's several thousand years of history there to be told to the people who are quite, driving the car, but in the future this car is going to drive itself. So they have to be educated and entertained. And TomTom agreed. They said, oh, it's a great idea. So we have our own application. It's fine, it works, you can see it yourself, and you play with it. It has 2 million downloads. But TomTom application, they have hundreds of millions. And we are going to promote your content you create to them for free. It means huge exposure. People will drive the cars and enjoy the stories. And by the way, it doesn't cost much. We discussed with them the project Highway Stories for Europe. It's 120,000 kilometers. We calculated just €3 million. We can find it. It's not a big deal. And for €3 million, we are going to cover whole Europe with Highway Stories played by TomTom, and also enriched by all city projects like we have in Milan or in Baltimore, etc. But it's not all. After TomTom, we have Google Maps, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Airbnb. All these applications need nice stories to tell. Again, we are going to push it all for free. And that's the homework which we are doing as a technological company. And so finally the picture is connected cities in different cities where museums and tourist authorities, hotels join the forces, sponsored by the private sponsors and public sponsors, and huge promotion through this application, because this one is 1 million users. So when James in Milan or Nancy in Baltimore go to Bloomberg, they can say, well, we are promoting this content to really huge public. And that's the idea of it all. And actually, we see that the future will be that tourists travel around the world. When they go to any city and any country, they will hear a lot of local stories, also created by local people. And in this way, people will start to better understand the world. And this is, in a way, a road to the world peace. For example, in Europe, we have a lot of refugees from Syria. Well, imagine a lot of guided tours could be created in Arabic language. In this way, the guys start to appreciate the values of the countries they are in. So it's quite important mission which we carry on to the future, to help people understand the world. I think that's it. And now you're going to enjoy the workshop prepared by Alex, Palin and colleagues, and see yourself that it could be done like that. That's it. And also when you install the application after the show, if you scan this QR code, that's actually the QR code to the Pinacoteca Milan, you can scan it from inside our application. At the moment, this guided tour is not published yet officially, so it's under so-called passcode. You have to enter passcode, but if you scan QR code, passcode is inside. So it allows museum to play before publishing officially. It's very convenient. When James decides to publish it officially, they click it and it will be published officially. Any questions? We reserve some time to answer the questions. If you have any. Yeah, we have some time. Oh, everything's over here.
I had a question.
James, come here. I need your help.
Okay. I'll come back. I was just looking for lunch.
I'll keep it brief. Jason Cardone. I'm a doctoral student in Venice, and for many years I've been a tour guide in Rome, so I've got my hands dirty a lot. And what's your take on tablets in the museum, movement-oriented content, animations, and just for an example, you have a triptych to have a visual that might animate it and show it as it might have been in its original context, that kind of stuff. Either or both.
You mean this kind of advanced technologies, may I call this way? Yes and no. Well, we see that some museums develop very sophisticated applications. In our case, we serve mostly small museums, middle-sized museums, and I mean compared to Ferrari and Fiat. When museums develop their own application with millions, it's kind of developing your own Ferrari, which is adjusted to all your requirements, augmented reality, all the things you mentioned. We are open platform. We have basic functionality, which is not so bad, by the way. We have quest, quizzes, audio, video, etc. But we see that majority of museums, 99% of them, are still struggling with storytelling. And we try to divert them from playing technology games. Say, guys, let's first explain yourself. Let's invest efforts and money in good storytelling. Later on, we watch all these Ferrari products in the museums. We'll bring all these high-level technologies. But we on purpose, how much museums forget about technology. Make the first basic things, which is storytelling. Later on, we are coming to it, and we know how it all works, but frankly speaking, if I implement these things, majority of museums will not be able to use it. So it's better to start with most simple steps, so if it answers your question.
But for example, in
Okay,
your
let
context...
me give you my, and this is where probably now, even in 2016, people will head for the door. I'm going to declare a deep-seated conservatism when it comes not to technology, as someone has done exhibitions on computer viruses and Napster, but to the experience of the visitor in a museum. I think that anything that happens on a screen that is transposed from the watching of the object itself, whether that is a virtual reality, if that is a tablet where I'm watching Botticelli paint, I think those are a rupture in the experience or destroy the possibility of my main goal, personally, which is people look at the painting. If I don't believe that something is in the painting that is different than this stuff, then I think I've betrayed the painting. That does not mean that I don't believe in those things. I mean, the reconstruction of a triptych online, that's great. I can see that in my bedroom. I can be staying up late with my tablet on my knees. I don't have to be there with that painting. Sure. I think anything which takes away from the unique moment in which I am together with an object made by an artist like Titian or Mantegna, I consider highly problematic. Now, devices in museums. Audio doesn't take me necessarily away. Text exists in the same time and space. A label lives in the same time and space as the object. Nancy and I were talking, hell, I can only put 2 languages down. Imagine I could have all the languages in text on a tablet. Fantastic. The moment I drop in a little video to show how they made that, you're watching TV, go home, watch TV. Everything is okay outside the museum with all those, everything we can do, 3D, whiz-bang, everything else. When you're there with the greatest work done by Mantegna in his youth, I don't want you, I want to allow your mind to understand why that's important. I believe in both the human mind, because as I said, interaction is not enhances here, and I believe in the work the artist did. If I don't, I've given up my profession. That's my very conservative position. Love all the stuff. I would have a blocker like they do in the theater. Get in the theater, you block the mobile phone. Get in the museum, you block all that crap. And you have to be together with the object. That's a position I say I betray my age, my conservatism, and it's actually not even open to discussion. I know all the arguments. I can tell you I can repeat almost any arguments, but that is my position. As long as I'm director of the Brera, I stick by the argument.
Well, I have to ask another thing. For example, what they did at the Cappella Scrovegni, where you have to sit and you're getting cleaned, in that room before you go in, but they're giving you a preparatory video thing. Would you integrate something like that? Obviously within the museum context, but not next to the painting.
It's in the principle of, sure. For me, I want you there with the object. Sure, all of the above.
So everything there, but I understand you.
When I was that object, that's what I'm doing. Why am I doing that? Why are you showing the video? To prepare the mind to encounter the object.
Then that's
all
good.
that is
That's
crap.
good. That's good.
When you're there with the object, I'm there with you. As I said, this has become a matter of faith, not logic, so it's not open. As some things, I'm very open and flexible. But this one's something I don't
It's an inflexibility that's absolutely, I think it's very valid, and I think long term it's probably better, in my humble opinion. But the idea of having the opportunity within a context like that museum, where there's a room or a space where people get to understand where that originally was.
And that's how we stay contemporary, because we have to understand that minds of today need to be prepared differently than when you had 2 slideshows of art history. I mean, that's what it means to be contemporary, to understand what we need to do to prepare your brain to see that thing that is real. And it's all we got left. Otherwise, I go home and watch television. or the tablet, or the 3D, or the virtual whatever. But that thing is intransigent, and the problem is it's harder for every generation to get their minds into that. Yes, we need all the web bells and whistles, but when they see the thing, I want their mind to be doing. Not the one, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Actually, I'm far from understanding this high-level philosophical discussion, but as a platform provider, we allow to put the video in, of course.
Of course.
So that's it. And actually, video is very heavy. And I remember that I was looking for an investor for 4 years. It's quite difficult to find an investor who is prepared to invest 15 million euros without any business plan, clearly. But I remember one guy hired some professionals from Canada to judge the project. They said, Alex, audio is not good. Now on the mobile telephones, video is cool. So it was the reason for not giving the money. But we really stick also to the audio. I was searching for investor who would pretty. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, no, well, I won't challenge you on that. I agree with you somewhat grudgingly. So anyway, but I'm sure you're right. Except, I mean, one of the questions that I had, with all of these issues to deal with in the museum where you are, in museums in Italy and so forth, how do you start? How do you decide where to start? You started with the labels. That was a place. But how do you decide now where to start to make things better with all of these issues?
Okay, well, first I just want to add in one last bit of nuance, just so you don't think I'm totally intransigent, a barbarian. It depends on content, too. I'm talking about Mantegna. If I were in a natural history museum and I have a skeleton of a bird, now, it's a skeleton, and what I'm getting at the skeleton is important, but there, for instance, you could drop the bird over the skeleton without harming, you would actually be creating a unique moment that was consonant with the object. So it's not even the absolute. Ernst Gomberg always told his students when they present their proposals for doctoral, for their PhDs, he'd look at them deeply and say, yes, but everything is more complicated. So even though I appear to be completely unreconstructed and in transit, in fact I've done, and in Florence, for instance, we had a show of American Impressionist painters. Now the paintings were in the class of Tourski, but Florence is Florence, and they painted pictures of, say, Ponte Vecchio. We made an app which allowed you to go out with your iPad and drop the painting over the existing bridge to see it exactly GPS located where they painted. So this is not a blanket dissing of the technology. It's saying that my faith has to remain with the mind of the object, whatever that object may be. Okay, returning to where do you start?
So I was talking more about you tackling these huge, other than technology.
The biggest single project is to change the way that people have conversations in the organization. I mean, this is not a management seminar, but the unsung and really rather difficult work is to reconfigure an organization that until December 2014, and effectively until my arrival, did not exist in an institutional way, i.e. the curators who worked in the Brera, in the desks at the Brera, did not work for the museum. They worked for the Soprintendenza, which is the blanket cultural management of the region's cultural resources. So they may be sitting at Brera, but if you said, do you work for the museum? They say, no, I do the churches in Lombardy. And that would be true. So changing the mentality of creating a museum with an identity, with common goals, is the biggest job. And it is finding the expression of putting people together to have conversations that will result in things they can feel proud of, which is the success of installation of the collection, is what I'm doing. But the real work is to recreate or change or shape an internal culture in the interest of the museum, which did not exist a year and a half ago as a museum. The only people who worked for the museum were the guards. The curators worked for Lombardy, churches, the Cenacolo. They worked in the museum, but not for the museum. And that is a huge, and indeed the greatest challenge is to bring those two groups together. A group deeply committed to the museum, but they're the guards, 120 of them, with the civil servants, for whom the museum as an object, as a locus, is new. That's the challenge. So yes, please, Deborah.
It's obviously very specific, to our situation in Italy right now with the autonomous museums. But it goes back to this platform. Working on this project, it's been really exciting, really interesting, and the platform I really do think is really cool, being a super non-technology person, because it does make it so easy and allows us to concentrate on the content. But the reason I wanted to cut in here is because one of the things that I've found most amazing about this process, which has been insane over the last couple of months trying to get this ready for the conference, is the ways that it allowed us to work on those projects, so that it started creating on a platform that is, I don't want to say ephemeral, but it is so easy to change and so easy to play with and so easy to experiment with. We were able to create amazing group conversations and start really tackling those ideas of, well, what is Brera? What does it mean to do education at Brera? What is our approach at Brera? And messed up. I mean, you guys, whoever got that QR code will look, and we're proud of what we've done. They're really not ready to publish. They're very experimental because we're still we're figuring it out, but it's been an amazing platform for those reasons too. So it sort of goes to, it's been a very interesting confluence of objectives.
So did you have similar or the same challenges in Florence while you were there?
There's a wonderful Thai word called ni, which is no and si. Yes and no. The challenges were similar, but I now realize that in Florence, I had effectively, at least if not a Ferrari, a car at the curbside with the key in it. The bits were in place. I had wheels, I had a seat, and people might not know where they were going. But there was Mrs. Deborah will correct me, it was not as easy as that, but the management structure, not the mentality internally, but it was smaller, lighter, and more manageable. At Brera, it's not just you've got a Fiat Topolino, you've got one with square wheels, and you're having to convince people why, if you cut the corners off a square wheel, it goes a little better. And so, I mean, there's really a much bigger change of internal. This is a state museum which has been run by Rome. The only adjective I can use to describe it is it's Soviet. It's top-down, centralized, dominated by irrational and unthinkable rules. At a team meeting recently, a new thing in the history of the entire museum is to meet as a team. I told my staff very seriously, I looked up and said, look, I have to hire a vice director. And I found somebody who's an international competition. I hired a young man from Czechoslovakia. His name is Franz Kafka. And in fact, you laughed faster than they did. Because, of course, I'm the director, they took me very seriously. And it took a long pause. And then they laughed because it is Kafkaesque. It is the castle. It is the real work is the organization. And the result, the expression is just new wall colors and labels, but they represent a huge internal set of new conversations and new ways of working. And that's what it takes all the time. Anyway. He turned the job down. Too complicated. Other questions from Boris?
Thank you so much.
Good. Well, you know what I like? That the whole presentation about technologies we spoke probably 10% of the time, majority of the time about the content, the internal life of the organization. And that's the way how we like it to be. That all you guys talk about the process of content creation. Forget about technologies, get it for free. From us, our competitors, enjoy it. Now the workshop, now you have to do it yourself. It's easy. Well, you've got the free lunch, now you have to do it. So, Alex. Well, Alex has set it up. Idea is very simple. We'll put computers on the table.
Sorry, we have some changes. We have some last minute changes.
Oh, no computers.
Okay, so we're going to get into the workshop. Oh, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Hi, I'm Peter Vega. I am working in business development here in the U.S. with izi.TRAVEL. And my colleague Alex Palin and our izi.TRAVEL team prepared a workshop for everyone to go through the content management system, the publishing tool, and to quickly develop an audio tour right here in person, so you can actually see how simple it is to create a tour on the platform. But first, I'm going to start with this. Okay, so as izi.TRAVEL is a platform, we are not content providers, but as the storytelling platform, my job and the rest of my team here in the US and our other business developers in Europe, our job is to help museums and other content providers create excellent, high-quality content on the platform, because we are essentially selling free. But our hope is to have as much high-quality content on the platform as possible. So, with that, we are all very aware of how to utilize the platform for storytelling itself. And what I would like to do is just go through a little bit of what we consider good stories and why they matter and why that is important on the platform. So good stories are essentially, you want to make them relevant to the person that you are speaking to. The person, you have to keep your audience in mind. Each stop, each audio piece for the object that you're creating should have a purpose. Every one of the stops should have a mission on what you would like to accomplish with that audience member and the object. We believe that the best stories actually trigger an emotion, whether that's you find some humor in the story, or whether you get an emotional attachment, or you are saddened by the story by it. There has to be some sort of emotional trigger to connect that person to the actual object. Told in the right time and place. I think time is the most important part of this, more so keep it short. Short and simple is important in telling a very good story. And that's what we encourage the stops for each of the objects that are on the platform, or the points of interest if you're creating an outdoor walking tour, should be at least 1.5 to 2 minutes tops. Keep it short, sweet, and simple, because you're going to lose the attention of the audience member quickly if you are telling too long of a story within that stop. Have a great narrator. If you want to find somebody who's excited about the content that they're talking about, somebody who's passionate about the story that's being told, that's when you're going to catch actual visitors' attention on the stories. And these are important because eventually the hope is that, like Alex has been saying, that these stories are going to live on past the platform, past all the technology. Concentrating on a very good story will outlive any sort of technology and will be passed on. I will quickly give you an example of an audio stop that we find kind of exciting. It's a very different way of telling a story, and
Off with his head.
Be quiet. How he's rattling.
Your sword will certainly put an end to that. He deserves it, the dirty swine.
How far have I come?
Fear not. You're doing his God's will.
What could be more disgraceful for a gentleman than to be killed by a woman?
You will return victorious, and the enemy will flee headlong.
So there you have us telling a story through a more theatrical approach, and talking about an art piece through narrating through character voices. We believe that actually is a different way of approaching how to create audio content. And one of I think both James and Alex touched upon this, but our idea is not to have as much of an institutional voice in storytelling, and let's bring new storytellers to the museums to tell different stories. We actually, when we go into the workshop portion, I suggest everyone, you'll have computers, I'll explain how it works, but we have a blog, blog.izi.TRAVEL. If you go there, the first thing you're going to see is tips on 10 things that a journalist gave to us on a tour that she created, and how she gives recommendations from a very different perspective, from a radio journalist perspective, on how to create audio content. And that's the type of content that we think is going to be the most exciting and most interesting to be on the platform. So, now to the workshop. So, we are in this, we've timed ourselves out from this room, so we have to move to the room down the hall to start the workshop portion of this. And when we get there, there will be computers and a mobile phone at each of the tables. We ask you all to split into 5 groups, and each group should have 5 to 6 people per table. And on each table as well, you're going to have a printed out step-by-step guide on how to actually use the content management system and publishing tool. So this will allow you to go step-by-step through the process. And each table is also going to have one of these laminated printouts that are going to give you the story of an object that is also on the table. So each table will be responsible for creating a story for the object that's on the table in the workshop. With the printout for the step-by-step guide, you are going to create an audio stop with your group, upload it onto the content management system, use a mobile device to photograph the object, upload that onto the content management system, and in the end, the final product is you're going to have 5 different audio stops for objects that are uploaded onto one tour, and you're going to create an audio guide right here in person.
Which will be immediately you'll be available on your own telephone.
Yes, and so it will be immediately available within the app that you can then test out and check. So, just before we move, keep in mind this is it's a demo. You don't have to take much time on the audio part, on the script writing. Just have fun with it. Enjoy the process of doing it. It is rather simple to do. And so now we can move over to the next hall, which is called the Porta Bon room, which is right down the hall.